Hello, everyone. Before we get started with today's podcast episode, let's go ahead and go over some housekeeping rules. If you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, be sure to hit the follow notification button so Spotify lets you know when I release a new episode. As well, leave me a comment on what you enjoy about the podcast and give me a 5-star rating. This is how you can support my podcast. And the disclaimer is I am not a licensed psychiatrist or therapist. My suggestions and my guests are based on general knowledge and life experiences. If you're considering making significant changes or dealing with personal issues, seek and talk to a licensed mental health professional. So let's go ahead and get into today's episode. Blessed Day Reflection by Abia listeners. My name is Abia Grant, and we are here to reflect on our life journey. We will be discussing topics related to self-awareness, self-improvement, and mental health. Also, the purpose of this safe space is for us to be free to discuss the ups and downs, celebrate the wins, and talk about ways to improve the lows. So welcome to this podcast, and I hope you gain something from this time we share together. Hello, everyone. It is your girl, Abia Grant. Welcome back to another episode of Reflection by Abia. I hope you guys are doing well and that you are having a blessed and glorious day. I am doing well on my end. I honestly just happy today is Friday. The date that I am recording this episode is April 25th. And I don't know, just this week, I've been feeling it and I just been extra tired. I just ready for this week to be over. So I'm just so happy that today is Friday. But like I said, I hope everything is going well on your end, that you are moving along, living life and going through the journey of life, and everything is leading to something positive. That's what I'm hoping for you guys. So let's go ahead and get into this week's podcast episode. I'm actually always pretty excited to record every episode, but I am very excited to be recording this episode because I feel like where I'm trying to navigate the podcast to, or at this moment where I'm trying to navigate the podcast to, and I'm trying to, I say and I, but I'm trying to be more looking internally to show up and talk about topics and things that happen to me. Don't know how long this is going to last, but yeah, so this week, I wanted to talk about superficial growth, and I want to talk about it in regards to superficial growth is not really growth, okay? I think that for me, it was a point in my journey where superficial growth was at the height. In that time, what I felt like was that I was making progress in my journey and becoming more just better person and living life, and not necessarily living life, but conquering and achieving the things that I want to achieve and learning more about myself. However, as time went on, I started to realize that it was not the case. Okay. So, what is superficial growth? So, like I mentioned before, it's you think that you had progress, but there's not really progress. Okay. You are doing all the things on the outside to look good, but internally, there's no improvement. Okay, you are basically the same person as you were before, but you've now put on this persona of things are better, but in actuality, things are not better. Okay, now, like I said, you typically fall back into like the same routine. So I've mentioned to you guys before about like how I'm trying to change my how I react and things like that. And for me, it was like I was superficially saying, "Hey, don't react to the situation, just walk away from the situation, just do these certain things," but I wasn't getting to the root of the problem on why I was reacting the way that I was reacting. So that's pretty much what it is. It's the thing is that with any type of growth or just being a better person, it's a transformation. It's a transformation from who you were before to who you are now. However, I feel like for me, especially early on in my journey of, I don't know if I necessarily was trying to learn myself. I think that I was trying to just put this mask on. Early in my journey, I felt like I just didn't have a lot of self-awareness. I also was a type of individual where I didn't want to take accountability for my actions. Like, if anybody ever said to me, Ab, you did this wrong, this is how you me feel or whatever. Like some lot of times it is related to other people, especially in partnerships. I would be like, well, this is the part that you played, or this is what you did to me, you know, and I would never hold myself accountable to what I did and what part I played in the situation, and being self-aware for myself so that I don't make those same mistakes again. So that's how it showed up, for me. But in this episode, I'm going to get into other ways that it showed up as well too. So what I realized for me is that not being self-aware and not being accountable, what typically what I feel like would typically happen with me is that I was desensitized from the situation. This is what I call situationally desensitized from the situation. And what that basically means is that you act like the situation doesn't exist and you avoid feeling. Feeling has been the big one for me because I don't like to feel. I I don't know. I kind of know where I'm trying to think. I feel like I know where it comes from. It comes from the avoidance of being hurt because I'll be honest with you, growing up without a male figure played a big part of I don't want to have pain. Like, I don't want people to have control over my emotions. And therefore, I'm going to just avoid feeling. But I know that avoid feeling comes from the pain of lack of a male figure. And I'm not saying there was men in and out my life, but that man that you wanted to be there, meaning my father. It took me time to come to understand that because when I grew up, and especially like in my early 20s, I never really attributed it to be that. I'm gonna be honest with you, and some people may think, oh well, that's not what it is. It must be something else. I feel like how you feel can be tied to so many things. And it's not just the male figures. There's other things that transpire as well too. But I know that's like top thing for me. Um, it's just a sense of protection. I want to protect myself. I don't want to be hurt. So I have applied that type of dynamics of being desensitized from certain situations because I don't want to feel the pain. So a lot of times I feel like when we're not as self-aware and when we are not holding ourselves accountable, a lot of times this is due to past trauma. And again, some people may be like, oh, that's not what it is. And I've gotten to a point now, and I either read something, saw something, I think I read something that said, I'm tired of apologizing. I'm no longer correcting myself, and I'm tired of apologizing for what I've been through. And a lot of times on this podcast, I have been like, well, that could, it may not be you, but it just may be me. Well, it can be, but like, I don't want you to take this personally, or it could be attributed to whatever, whatever, whatever. And I'm just at this point now, in the past couple of weeks, I'm no longer going to apologize for my trauma. My trauma is my trauma. Your trauma is your trauma. Your situation can be completely different than mine, but I'm no longer going to be like, well, trying to mask and put on this thing like it wasn't really that. Okay. I just want to say that. I just want to point that out. Now, going back into situationally desensitized, the fact of the matter is that we don't want to we don't want to make the necessary corrections. Again, we act like it does not exist. And I did this a lot when I found out, well, this is prior to me finding out that I had anxiety and I had depression. I would avoid, and constantly it would show up. And I would constantly avoid and duck and dive. And it became a point where it was like, girl, you could no longer duck and dive anymore, because what happened is that it started to impact different parts of my life. It didn't just focus on home. Then it started to focus on work. It started to focus on just me personally. It started to focus on my relationships and friendships, and it started to basically take root in different areas. So it got to a point where, for me, I couldn't avoid anymore. I had to face the truth that this is what was going on. So I want to get into the next bullet point. Now, when I am talking about superficial growth, I earlier talked about how it may look like, and I just spoke about, it a second ago. Now, on the surface, there's so many things that can be going on. But I feel like this is more related to the Band-Aid situation, and this is more related to, you think that you've had growth, but there really isn't much growth. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. Hello everyone. Thank you for tuning into Reflection by Abia. Feel free to check out the podcast Facebook and Instagram page. The links will be available in the show notes. Let's get back to the podcast. So I jotted down a couple of bullet points on how that it may look in your journey or in your life. Is that you're telling yourself that tomorrow you will show up differently, but not actually putting in the work and getting to the root of the problem. So it's like, I'm saying to myself, well, I'm going to just not be angry tomorrow. But I'm not getting to the root on why I was angry initially, or where is it stemming from. That is superficial growth, because you're not facing what is actually going on. Another one for superficial growth is that you're looking at what someone else is doing and trying to emulate them, rather than owning your own stuff and making the necessary changes for yourself. I don't know how many times where I have looked at Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, those are normally the platforms that I'm on. And I say, I'm trying to be like X, Y, and Z. However, I have applied no changes to myself. I'm just trying to emulate what this person says I should do, but never really facing the problem, well, not facing the problem, and not owning my own stuff. I'm telling you, it doesn't work. You trying to emulate somebody else or using that person as a role model, it doesn't work if you're not facing your issues. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong to inspire to see someone do something, be a certain way, and not want to be like that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that you got to face your issues. You got to face your trauma, whatever it is, in order to change. And honestly, I don't I don't see I would never want to emulate and be exactly like someone else. Like, you should have your own identity. There's nothing wrong with taking certain aspects of a person, quality traits that you may like or whatever, and maybe you're trying to, put that into your situation or who you are, but be you. Don't be like somebody else. We are all are created as individuals, and we should remain that way. I feel like that. So another one of superficial growth is that I'm saying I'm over it. I don't know how many times I did this. Saying I am over it when you are really not over it. And then you get triggered. And then emotionally it sets you back. How many times have I come on this podcast episode or come on this podcast and said to you guys, I got triggered, or this situation happened, I got triggered and I messed up. It's because I was not facing why I get myself triggered. Why do I put myself in that place? What happened in the past that I was triggered or felt I wasn't in control, and I showed up protecting me? Because that's kind of like what I feel like it is like you're protecting yourself. But what are you protecting yourself from? What are you protecting yourself from? That's the part where you have to look at and you have to examine. One of the next ones that I have for superficial growth is consuming content about self-improvement but never applying it to your life. I just talked about this. The emulation, the looking at what someone else is doing, but never really correcting or uprooting your problems. So you're consuming all this content, but you're not really applying the content because you're not fixing the problem. You're not fixing what is wrong. So you're consuming for what? Just to say that you did, and just to say tomorrow or a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever time frame you're going to be better, but then you're going to return back to the old person as you was because you never really fixed anything. What value is in that? What growth is in that? All right. The next one is using positivity to avoid the pain. I don't There is so many times that I've done this where I'm like, everything is good, everything is positive. This worked out for me, and therefore, I am not going to face what didn't work out for me or what I went off about or whatever I had to face. I just say, well, this positive thing, this supersedes all the stuff, and therefore I'm just going to avoid all the problems and just work on and just focus on the positive or just focus on what I think is, working in alignment with me. I'm not saying that you should focus, how can I say this? What I'm saying is that you cannot avoid, I said enjoy, you cannot avoid the negative. The negative is going to show up. And you should want to be positive. You should want to know that things are going to work out. But the only way you could get those negative things to work out is if you actually work on it. Trying to band-aid it with whatever positivity that you've received from somewhere else, eventually it's going to, that band-aid's going to come off. That wound is not healed. So trying to avoid the pain, you know, it's not going to work. You got to step into that pain. You got to figure out what is exactly going on. And it's going to be hard. I'm not saying that it's easy for me to face the things that's going on with me or has gone on with me. Every day is a challenge for me. But I'm like, you know what? I choose to do this. I choose to be better. So therefore, I got to step into this. So, how can superficial growth stall your healing? All right. So, superficial growth is a illusion. I think we all, after hearing this episode, we can come to terms with that, right? You're not healing. What you're doing is you're not facing a problem. What you're actually doing in conjunction to that is you are performing. You are basically showing up flawed. You are not wanting to face the issue. However, you are putting on an illusion and a face like everything is perfect and everything is not perfect. And we all are flawed. We all are. It's a facade. It is a performance. That's what it is. And instead of you pushing through the truth, instead of you trying to heal and face the trauma, you're basically stalling your healing by putting on this show that things are great and things are really not. I don't know how many times I've stepped out into this world and I have performed, and act like everything was great and everything wasn't. As soon as I stepped into my door, it was like I wanted to cry because I've been performing for hours on end, pushing through for hours on end. Then once I get behind closed doors, I'm breaking down. I don't know how many times I've done that in my past. So like I said, for me, I got to a point where I was tired of performing. And yeah, I was just done. So again, I want to get into how superficial growth showed up in my life. And these are just some, you know, things I wanted to share about me and know that, show that you guys are not the only ones. If this has been you, that you're not the only ones. All right. So in my partnerships, pushing away people for something someone else did to me. This has showed up also in my routine or my daily routine. Feeling like I have to do things a certain way and I cannot deviate from doing it a certain way. Okay. Work wise, leaving my last job but not taking ownership by changing my behavior and how I move in my life. Now, all of these have been moments where I've had superficial growth. And I'm like, I'm better. I've worked on the things. I'm going to do this. This is, what so and so said to do, blah, blah, blah. And here we go. And realizing, oh no, you still at step one. You think that you at step 5 or 6, but nah, girl, because you're not working on it. So how did I prove these things in my journey? I forgave my past partners who burnt me, partners who didn't show me respect. I forgave them, and it's taken time. I forgave them for how they treated me, so that I could show up 100% in my relationship. Okay. For the next one, where I talk about routine, I had to understand that I needed everything to be perfect because I didn't have control of the things in my youth. I talk a lot about my youth. Um and it played a part. I'm gonna be honest with you. It has played a part because there's many times in my youth where I did not feel in control. And now as an adult I try to control everything, but I can't because it's just out of my control. All right. So it was facing that and knowing that is really where it comes from and what I'm going to do now to fix it, or not even, or just be better in my reactions or how I move. So going to work wise, I had to understand that I put too much pressure on myself to be perfect. I That's just always been me, and I know I'm not perfect. I make a lot of mistakes. Okay, but for work, I've always put that pressure on me to be the best, and it has failed me because it's pushed me into places that I I shouldn't be giving this my all. Like, I need to focus also on myself at the same time. I have to make sure that I'm good, you know, that I'm not burning myself out trying to be perfect. So, like I said, this is where I've gotten thus far in regards to those three issues that I know were the top priority on how I move in my journey or how I move in my life, and what things I had to face and what things I wanted to change about myself. So, in closing, what I learned is that life, gets real. And honestly, life is tiring. However, you have to take the steps forward if you know that you don't like who you are in this moment, or you're not seeing the growth that you want to see. Life is going through life. However, in order to be a better person, you got to face it. You got to face the trauma. You got to face the issues. You got to face all these things. And once you face that, what happens is that you start to be honest with yourself. Okay? Like, nothing can change if you're not honest where you are. So face the truth, be honest with yourself. Go back, dig for the things that played a part in your journey, and use those. Try to find tools and use those tools in order to step forward better. And it's not going to change overnight. It's going to take time. But the fact of the matter is that you are aware about it. You've now started working and making progress on it. And slowly but surely, you'll notice that things start to get better. Okay? That is my advice for today. All right, guys. So stay blessed out there in those streets. Make sure that you treat others kindly out there in those streets. And God willing, I will talk to you guys in the next podcast episode. Thank you for listening to Reflection by Abia. Let me know in the comment section what you thought about today's episode and share the podcast with your friends and family. The link will be available in the show notes.